We're ready to go, and I guess, Earl, is there any particular order for how you want to go about this?
Now there's a workshop, so you call us the order and then we'll allow her to fill.
Okay. I don't know if you want to discuss anything about this or later.
No, we'll let her,
Okay.
Do I need to be behind here for the mic?
I don't have, I mean.
Not for the recording.
Masses now. No, that's pretty, very pretty.
Okay, everybody knows Miss Tammy, she's been with us before, and so this is the second half,
Part two.
part two.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me back, and good afternoon to everybody. You know, it's a pretty day out there, and I'm thinking how many places you all could be besides here. So I really am honored that you're here today to talk about the future of gambling. And so, shall we get started? Before we really get started though, in today's work, for those of you that were here last time, when we met in the commission chambers, I wanted to see if there were any thoughts that you had after we met in the fall, any insights that had occurred to you from that time together that you want to share before we get started, or anything we definitely want to talk about today to follow up from 3 months ago. If you can remember back then. We've had holidays and everything since then. Anything come to mind? I like it. So today we're going to review our work from the fall, from October when we met before. We're going to talk about achieving our collective goals, and finally we're going to start doing some planning for 2022 and beyond for the good of gambling. And we're going to decide in that process on some actions that will lead your work throughout the rest of the year, we hope. That's the plan. So let me see if I can get these slides going. Yes, they go. And so during our time together today, in the fall, or time together in the fall, that is, we discussed the role of the city commission and the staff in carrying out the work of the city. You recall that we talked about the various roles and responsibilities that both commissioners and staff have for your work. And we also reviewed the survey results, and remember you all participated in a survey, and we reviewed those results, particularly relating to teamwork and the common themes that emerged from those surveys and our discussion. And Earl has passed out the summary from both the surveys and the work that we did in person in October. We're not really going to refer directly to that today, but it's a good way to refresh your memory on what was shared through the survey results and at the time of the session. So several conclusions can be drawn from the time we spent together. And the one that struck me in the side of the head really was how the pandemic has limited your all's ability to work more as a team, to get to know each other better, to get to know other cities and other ways of doing things, in the unlikely chance that Danville doesn't have the best ideas already for how to lead a city. It's nice to learn from other cities. And you all have not been able to do that as a commission or a staff as much because conferences have been canceled. In-person meetings are practically non-existent these days. So that has really stifled a lot of what you would normally be doing to move the city forward. Anybody would disagree with that? And that also happened right at the same time that you got, almost exactly at the same time, that you got a new commissioner. That you had a new commissioner installed, and then the pandemic happened. So that even stifled your team building opportunities even more drastically. And so these other conclusions from our October meeting and the surveys are that the commission and staff are all committed, very much committed, and desire better communication among each other and with the community in general. And commissioners and staff are in direct alignment on the pressing priorities and what you think needs to happen for the good of the citizens of Danville. So despite all the challenges that you've been facing, I quickly noticed in our time together that you're still, like I said, in close alignment, and that will carry you quite far as long as you stay aligned and on the same page about the work ahead of us. And we talked about priorities. These things, actually 9 things, emerged from the survey results. And then I asked you to hone in on the top themes that you wanted to focus in on over the next year. And the commission came up with these 4 themes. And then the staff did the same exercise and came up with these 4 themes. So as I said, you're quite aligned in your thinking. So those are our key focus areas for the coming year, and we're going to spend the majority of our time today working toward some decisions on these 4 themes. We also talked about at the time the 5 characteristics of team behaviors from Patrick Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of teamwork. And because of your responses in the 2 foundational categories of trust and conflict, we spent a little bit more time last time talking about those 2 issues a bit and came up with these elements of trust in the process. When there is trust in a team, there's honesty and openness, there's vulnerability. People recognize competence, appreciate people's motives, and the means of getting to decisions. There's a lack of fear, and in general, a sense of trust in the team produces better decisions. Conflict, on the other hand, can lead to some chaos, but conflict is natural. If you have a team or a group working together that doesn't have any conflict, it might mean that you're sweeping your issues under the rug so that you have a false sense of alignment. But if you have too much conflict, you're likely to have chaos and dysfunction and even backstabbing and other worse behaviors. So conflict is always more productive when there is alignment about your mission and your goals, and we've already talked about how aligned you all are. That helps to keep any disagreements to center around the how and the when of actions instead of the what and the why. That makes sense? And too little conflict results in that artificial harmony that I just talked about. And that, the excessive conflict, chaos, backstabbing, and those kinds of behaviors are a particular danger for political institutions that have elected officials. So we want to avoid those if at all possible, that kind of conflict behavior if at all possible. What you want to seek is healthy conflict that is centered on the pursuit of truth and that helps to establish mutual understanding of the issues at hand. So we're going to delve a little deeper into teams in the commission context today. And because the commission is elected, there are some characteristics that of the commission itself, for those of you on the commission, that differ from many typical work teams. In fact, those differences may impact your success as a commission and as individuals. And for staff in the room, those differences may make your job a little challenging when trying to communicate your needs and expertise to the commission. So what makes the commission different? For one thing, you each have individual goals: getting elected, keeping campaign promises, satisfying your constituents, those kinds of things. But you also have a lot of team goals, commission-wide goals or city-wide goals that need to be worked on. You can name off 5 or 10 off the top of your head probably. Airport annexation, the new EDA, responding to extreme weather events like you had this weekend and like you had in December with the tornado, COVID, those kinds of things that you have team goals to do, you have to work as a team to solve. Some of your individual goals that you may have as a commissioner may affect other commissioners, and some have nothing to do with any other commissioners. You as a commission are rewarded for the group's productivity and decisions and progress, but you as an individual commission member may be rewarded for your individual accomplishments within the commission, or your individual reputation you build in the community as a result of your time on the commission. Does that make sense to the commission members in the room shaking their head? So in this context, team and group can get a little fuzzy at times. So let me ask the commissioners and mayor in the room, why did you run for office in the first place? Back when? Way back when? Yes, ma'am.
I ran because there was apathy and no one was running. And I thought if I could run just to do it and show other people they could, then when my time was done, I could help others run. So there'd be more voices, more demographics represented,
Right.
that type of thing.
Okay.
There was a lot of people complaining but not stepping up. And this group that's been here a while, they kept stepping up, so much respect to you.
So, what did I must have done something wrong here, but. Go back. That's where we are. Is that where we are?
One more, a couple more.
Oh, here we go. Okay. So there was complaining going on. Better put that down before I do it again. Mayor, you were saying you've been on the commission 8 years now. You've been the mayor 8 years now. Can you think back to 8 years ago why you decided that you were going to put your name out there?
Sure, there was a number of things that existed for a long time, and the stars lined up, and I said, if you're going to do it, now's the time to do it. Speaking out there holds your peace, and so that's when I threw my name in the ring.
Okay, so the timing was good for you. Anything else?
I had certain things that I wanted to see get done, and sometimes in order to get things done, you got to get in the middle of the ring. Trying to get things done from the side, you can't get it done.
Right. Okay, Commissioner Terry?
My first answer is to make a difference. My other answer, well, I have several, but there was a certain demographic that was on the commission for a long time, and I wanted to change that.
So change
Demographics,
change demographics.
bring a different perspective.
Mr. Atkins?
One of my answers, I taught students about public service, so set an example of what a real public servant should look and sound and smell like. And then the other thing is that I think there was I want to be an example of our form of government.
You mean,
How it's supposed to operate.
how this form of government operates?
Yes.
So show an example of how this form of government can operate.
Yeah, I advocated when I ran that I did not have a personal agenda,
Okay.
which to identify what was the best for the community.
Okay. Commissioners and Mayor, have I missed anything here? Anything you want to add? Well, that's a pretty good list, and I'm glad to see that so many of you wanted to really go forward on some ideas to make a difference, to set an example, to provide more voices on the commission level. That is encouraging for sure. Corollary question of that is, okay, you ran and you were elected, and you ran as individuals, of course. Did it occur to you at the time that once you became a city commissioner or a mayor, that all of a sudden your individual reasons for running and your individual purposes had to take a back seat to, or at least collaborate with, the needs of the city? Was that a hard transformation to make?
No.
No. Good. I see, I got everybody shaking their heads. That's a good sign. So we've all heard the saying that the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, right? And that kind of sums up the way a city government and an elected body works. It makes the whole better than individual parts. And I'm glad to see that there's enough variety here, but enough commonality here to show that Danville is in a good place commission-wise. So once you think about why you ran, and you think about now transferring that individual interest into group performance, what do you think are the greatest contributions that you make as a member of City Commission? And not just, I had this great idea one time, but in general, what basic experience skills do you see as your great strength on the commission? Mayor, if you want to start, or do you have any thoughts about that?
You pick on me first, get somebody else.
I'll go. Okay,
I guess I've always served like around a lot of people, like the wellness center, and then at church, and then I have a store. So I'm with people all day, I hear from people all day. So I brought before, never one of my ideas. I only brought forward the major ideas people told me. So I just wanted to kind of listen and bring that to the commission, like, this is what I'm hearing.
so
And
you're
not
listening,
everybody has a job that they, I guess, interact as much with so many different demographics.
so would you say your listening skills?
Yeah, I mean, I just took notes, I listen, I write things down, and I try to share what I've heard that citizens want.
So you give voice to the citizens' interests in
Yes.
some way. Okay, and who wants to go next?
Well, I use the word diversity and the word inclusion, and people immediately think when I say those words, they're talking about race. But they, I think it's about a whole lot more than just that. That I want to bring diversity and inclusion, because in my lifetime, I probably lived on both sides of the track.
So different perspectives that maybe weren't heard from before. Mayor Terry? Commissioner Terry?
I'm not sure how to verbalize it.
That's a first.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
I think the assumption has been in the past that the people sitting in those chairs are of a certain lifestyle or are of the upper class, upper income even. And I am not and have never been and have had many struggles in my adult life. And so that's who I represent.
So-
I represent the single parent, the
Really?
struggling business owner,
So really more diversity and, to bring different perspectives.
You want to put lower class on there?
Give them some masking tape for days away.
So perspectives of different, economic and demographic
Yeah.
groups. Okay. Okay, Mary, you gotta start
Well,
up.
it caused me to think, and I think if I had any contribution, it was the awareness of how far behind we have gotten in terms of being competitive on the economic development front. And that's not necessarily a popular thought.
I don't know.
But I think it's kind of.
So you focused a lot in
Become aware of.
Okay.
The love and passion that I have for this community. I just want it to be the best it can be.
All right. I would bet that all 5 of you would have that same love and compassion and passion for this. Good. Anything else anybody wants to bring up?
You notice that Commissioner Cottle is absent today,
I did.
so anytime you want to hear his opinion, his thoughts about something, just let me know, I'll tell you.
I was gonna say, well, just volunteer.
Yeah, we'll put him down, we'll put him down as, and I was looking around, and I was thinking, I should see.
I saw you looking.
Yeah. First I thought I missed it. So when you think of the city commission's work, there are really many techniques that you can employ to maximize your impact. And Earl tells me that you all have been studying this little book in the last, staff and commissioners together have been studying this little book called Move Your Bus recently. Am I right about that? You all could probably quote it chapter and verse by now, right? So who wants to start? No, I'm just kidding. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that thinking and as it relates to leadership and moving the city forward rather than just the bus itself. So as you know, Ron Clark in that book has some excellent ideas on maximizing impact. And whether you're part of a political institution, on the board of your church, or part of a work team, or a member of a soccer group, the soccer team, lessons from this simple allegory, we can call it that, can provide some real clarity about what we should be doing and why to move our teams forward for peak performance. So to refresh everybody's memory, not that you need it, but we will, the bus is like a car, from the car of Fred Flintstone cartoon days from the early 60s. Now, though most of you aren't old like me, so you might not remember that cartoon. But it took place in the Stone Age, and of course there were anything like a car, engine, or motor to propel people forward, so good old Fred Flintstone would run in his little car to move it forward. So that's the image that we're talking about in Move Your Bus. The bus metaphor is really quite simple, but it's not simplistic at all. The bus consists of runners, joggers, walkers, riders, and of course the driver that puts it all together. And all of those, individually and collectively, all of those team members can impact the safety, the speed, and the performance of the bus through their work ethic, their motivation, their dependability, attention to detail, and those sorts of things. Or they can impact that progress negatively through their whining, their resistance, their sense of entitlement, and so much more. If I got that right about who are the players on that bus? So the advice in Move Your Bus works for just about any group that wants to succeed. Would you agree? I know when I was reading it, I was thinking about all the different work groups and boards and teams that I've been a part of over the years, and could see the runners in my mind, and see the sitters and the riders, and see the walkers, and I could really see when I was that rider in my hopefully deep dark past. So I want to take that moving the bus metaphor in and combine it with another classic take on group development. And this applies to not just the city commission, but to the city staff as a whole, really easily. So in any group, there, as it's forming, there are 4 main stages of group formation. And those are forming, storming, norming, and performing. Those were initially coined, those terms were initially coined by Bruce Tuckman back in the 60s, but it is so relevant to any team formation that I've been a part of. And it is a process, but it's also something that you can go backwards and forwards, skipping stages along the way depending on what's going on in the environment. So if you have a crisis in your work team or your city, a tornado, for example, or a pandemic, for example, that might create a team that was just forming to skip a step and get to norming and get to performing really quickly because there's no other choice. Or when a team member leaves the group and all of a sudden you realize that, oh, they did a lot more than I thought they did, then you might go back to having to reform your team. Does that make sense? So let's go over each of those individually and put a little bit of Ron Clark's magic into the mix. So in the forming stage, group members are active, but they're anxious, they're polite to each other, maybe too polite. Everybody's trying to get to know one another, trying to check each other out, see where they stand, where you fit in with your team, and they're learning to work together. Ron Clark would say that in this stage you want to show your friendliness, you want to identify who the runners are and align yourself with them because they're going to be the ones that are setting the pace. And you need to remember along the way to ask for help. Anything else in the forming stage that Ron would suggest for us? All right, so then, after you formed and getting to know each other a little bit, you start storming a little bit. Group members begin to push the boundaries and test the team goals. They might disagree with one another, grow frustrated with the personalities that are in the room, begin to experience conflict around things like personalities and task assignments and options and even goals and mission at some point. Ron says, during that period, you want to be sure to accept the criticism that is put your way. Be sure to do those housekeeping kinds of things, keep the windshield clean, and remember that everybody's responsible for that. You want to stay positive and remember to meet people where they are. And then after people get used to each other and get past that stage, there is the norming stage when things just start clicking. People resolve their differences, people communicate more freely, commit to the team's goals more than their individual goals, develop respect for each other's perspectives, expertise, skill sets, and these background things that you all talked about in why you're on the commission in the first place. And they become more productive as a group so that they move to the performing stage. And during that, the norming stage, Ron would say that you want to show up every morning prepared to succeed and show up on time. You want to stay in your own lane, find solutions, and show appreciation. And when you move to the performing stage, that's when the work really gets done. You become problem solvers, and Ron will be so proud of you in that area. You achieve the group's goals. You share your roles and responsibilities with one another so that no one takes too much of a burden, and everybody shares that burden equally, or at least equitably. You begin to appreciate the differences that you have, and then you use them to enhance your team performance. And I like the fact that there's thoughts about diversity on the commissioner, from the commissioner's standpoint, because those differences can make all the difference in performance as well. And you support one another in your work. So in Move Your Bus terminology, it is keeping expectations high at this point, helping the runners to shine and the joggers to do better or to be their best selves, and helping the walkers to improve. I was struck by the fact that Ron Clark didn't even really try very hard to do anything about the riders, because he wants to spend all his time helping the best get better rather than the worst get just a little bit better. Makes sense? And then, at all costs, enjoy the ride. Any thoughts about that nice little metaphor? Oh, our quiet group.
It's the time of day, we need good morning.
I'm making you think right after lunch. How dare me? So, back to the stages again. If you were to think about the team that you're on, whether it's the commission team, your individual work team for city staff, your day job, if you're a commissioner, or your church board work, or whatever your work is, work or volunteer work, where would you put yourself in terms of stage development? Anybody have enough courage to say?
I think since we have a lot of new team members, for the management team at least, I think we're in a little bit of all of those.
I think you could be, yeah, absolutely, depending on what
You
you're
know,
talking about.
You've got a new person that's over a department, you're learning, or you're starting a new department, you know, we have people that are in different stages of growth.
Well, people and the team itself.
And the team itself.
Right. And anytime you've got a new team member, Commissioner Holland, you have to start forming all over again, right? You might be performing on one level, but you're also forming a new team. And it's your job, whether it's the city staff or the city commission, to help pull that team back to everybody being in the performing stage, right? And that's been particularly problematic during COVID and masking and Zoom meetings and everything else that goes along with it.
I was going to say that for myself as an individual, the topic, the issue causes me to be at certain different levels.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And it's really important for me when human resources brings a new issue to the table. And I'm not a human resources person, but I go back to the forming stage and let human resources, for example, educate me, lead me towards the normal important performing stage. And
Right.
I try to tell myself that's a part of my maturity nowadays.
Yeah,
I wouldn't do that way.
You can't know everything all the time, that's absolutely correct. So you have to count on the expertise of all the other people around you in this room, because there is a lot of expertise. I've talked to a bunch of the program directors over the last couple of weeks, and every one I've talked to, I'm even more impressed than the one before. So you do have a lot of expertise to help you make decisions. So in terms of forming, storming, norming, and performing, what practices do you think, Ron Clark's or any other ones for that matter, that will help make your bus move forward faster, better, with better performance, that you individually can do? And Commissioner Atkins pointed to one is listen to the experts, and remember that you can't be an expert in all things. And Mayor Perros mentioned earlier that he was singularly focused on economic development as a need in the city, and so he has a great deal of focus that brings to bear for the good of the city. And not everybody can focus that directly. I'm all over the place when it comes to that. Anybody else have any thoughts? Staff, you all can talk too. So I should mention here, though, that there is one more aspect of group formation, and we've talked about it before a little bit, and that's the fact that the city commission is not your typical work team because it is a political subdivision with elected officials in the room. And so there are different political views, there are times when you're colleagues and times when you're opponents to one another. So it's probably a good idea to, I would say, talk about the elephant in the room, but then we have to talk about the donkey in the room. So it's a good idea to get this out there, I guess is what I should say. So regardless of the political climate that you're in, or the time of year, or the year that you're in, like we are this year, the work of the city must still get done. Conflict may be unavoidable, and disagreement may be unavoidable, but we all agree that it should remain civilized at all times. And remember that when the election is over, whether that you still want to have a productive commission for the good of the city, and win or lose, you still want your legacy from the time that you were on the commission to be a strong one, that people will remember you for the good work that you did. And even when you're retiring, you want that as well, right? And if you think about it, we talked about a little bit about differences, different perspectives on the city commission, and political philosophies, if you think about it, are just one more aspect of diversity. That if we can meet each other in their philosophical grounding, then we can make better decisions for the city of commission. Would anybody disagree with that? So, enough of that politics talk. It bores me. So we're going to talk about future planning. And this is what we want to spend the remainder of our time together today on. And that is, we're going to talk about the future for both the city as a whole and the commission as well. And the best place to start on that process is by looking in the rearview mirror a little bit and talk about your 2021 goals and where you fall in those. And I'm going to ask Earl to tell us about that.
Where do we want to start? Start at the bottom, utility capital, all of those projects, we haven't, that's a long list. And Marshall, how many projects you got, Marshall, right now, active?
Right now?
8,
Yeah,
7 or 8, yeah. And so all of them require a lot of planning. So that's one thing with all the projects is a little bit misunderstood, is how much, and Josh and I was talking about that with Streetscape. You know, Streetscape has been extremely active, hasn't it? And it's been something that Josh works on almost every day, but nobody sees it. And so it becomes this black box of was anything happening on it, right? So that's interesting. But all the utility projects, we've got the sewer projects towards Meggett. There's 2 phases of that. There's a water line project out there. All those are going. We have Fairville Road water line that's going in multiple phases. The tower, I'm sorry. Yeah, the tower's almost built on there. You've got the pump station that we finished up hopefully by March or April, probably. And then the wastewater plant, which is, a $10 million project that's underway, prepping for capacity expansion there. So all those things have been initialized really since July 1st of last year, except for the Fairville Roads work on the water line. Staffing, we've done a good job with step 1 of the compensation plan. We remember, as you'll recall, we broke it up into 3 years. So we implemented the first year. We'll be trying to make sure we can fund year 2 of that, the second step, so that we get all the way to the market. Remember the market correction we were trying to make, we broke it up into 3 budget cycles to do that full implementation. So we took the first step, recruiting people. So what's the
And you're in the
term?
first budget cycle right now?
We're in the first budget cycle right now, which by breaking it up into 3, it meant it happened over 2 years, because July 1st was the first step, right? Which we felt like made it more affordable. Then recruiting, what's the Chief Gray's back there, but what's the turnover in PD again for the public or for the group?
So last year, I don't have that.
We had like 10, 12
We
turnovers.
turned
last year.
over 10 in 2020, I think it was 10 or 11. In 2021, we turned over 2. Those weren't related, well, one of them was prior to the implementation of the compact.
Yeah.
Or was founded, so we improved significantly.
So statistically, you would say that the staffing has been stabilized, but it's going forward. We have, on Monday night, we'll be looking at the healthcare broker for the health insurance. And one of the big things in the budget process this year is trying to incorporate year 2 of that adjustment. Then the EDA right now, the EDA is trying to get underway. We've had a couple of planning meetings, working on the bylaws, trying to get established. EDP is meeting tomorrow. They are wanting to discuss, structural, how do we incorporate the EDA, so that discussion's ongoing. And we have to, we're annexing the airport, which is, believe it or not, it is a big incentive. One of the reasons you want to do that, because you want to incentivize on-air traffic. We don't have an interstate. And so one of the key pieces of economic, so there's not necessarily an immediate economic development project or specific agenda item for the airport, but we need to incentivize on-air. That in and of itself is marketing. Being able to communicate through your economic development team that we're trying to position ourselves for on-air economic activity that's significant, because we don't have an interstate. So that's our mode of
And there's
transportation.
nothing you can do, no matter
How hard you work.
how hard you work, there's nothing you can do to make an interstate go through or beside your community.
So, and we don't have,
We don't necessarily want that, but sometimes you
Well,
are
yeah.
automatically crossed off the list because you're.
Because no
Right.
one's.
and we don't have a river, we don't have river barge type transportation, so what do we have? And we have a successful airport potentially, with advancement moving forward. And then also we have rail, and so we need to market our strengths. And so then livability, we're doing the streetscape implementation right now. That's he's rolling that out February 1st, I think, to the commission in terms of what the final plan looks like for summertime construction. Ideally, right after brass band or 4th of July, we break ground on streetscape. Parks master plan, I think, same thing, February 1st. I think we've got to a point where we have a successful phase 1 that touches a lot of boxes for the money that's currently allocated. A lot of details to be determined in those, but we've met with several potential partners, including the schools, including the hospital, and we've not gotten a lot of pushback yet. Of course, the devil's in the details, and there's still several steps to go there. Once you get past your obvious, the low-hanging fruit on that. And then the downtown master plan has got a sundry of key pieces to it. We're working with Center, continuing to work with the hospital on some of their issues. The biggest part of implementation on the downtown master plan is just getting the fire station done, then beginning to turn our attention to that corner, which was the spot where we need to focus on expanding downtown first and the biggest obstacle downtown has is that it's just full. It has, we need more buildings, we need more building footprint. We had, if you go look at the picture that's in the office at City Hall, you will see a lot of buildings that were built that are not there. A lot of those properties that are empty have been turned into parking lots out of necessity. And so we need to claw back some of that for building space for residential and also commercial retail. So that was the cornerstone of the master plan, and that's what we're working on there. So almost everything on our list, the main list we had the planning meeting, we had 2 last year, the end of January 28th, we had the first where we just looked at the long list of goals and objectives the city commission had over the years in 2 or 3 forms, and we consolidated it into one list, and then in April, we followed up on that again with what's our top priorities. Those were the top things at that second meeting that we pulled out. Those are the things.
strings. And you're also in an envious position with other cities, and you know this about yourself, and that is how many cities have run out of buildings and storefronts in their downtown. Instead, most cities are trying to fill up those downtown storefronts. How fortunate you all are to have that problem.
Yeah, it's unique, and when you go around the state and you look at other little communities in the state of Kentucky that's equivalent to us, you do not see an abandoned warehouse district that needs demolished, gutted. Even Alexa has that issue. You just don't even see, you don't see that here.
Yeah.
And then 2, you don't have a large swath of blighted area that needs redeveloped. You don't see either of those 2 things. The buildings we have that aged out and were demolished have been converted to parking lots to support things like the hospitals, support downtown businesses, and we need to reclaim some of that land back for structures. Or as a community, it's not the city, but as a community, to make room. And, a lot has been said about recent conversations about the need for restaurants downtown. And for example, but those don't really fit real well in really old buildings. Copper Note, their kitchen's on 2 floors, one in the basement.
Well, that's convenient.
And so we, the idea of the downtown master plan is to provide space for the enterprises that want to be downtown, like the banks or doctor's offices or attorneys, for example, because the courthouse is there. And so then also make room for new restaurants so that those restaurants have customers through the week, which is your businesses. And then also your restaurants have new space to be in, which is more efficient and makes their business enterprise more sustainable.
I think this goes back to what we learned there earlier about where we may be at different places on different topics. So the commission has been, forming and storming, and I think we're kind of norming now as a whole, and starting to perform on some of these things. But not only is it the commission, but it's also, the staff is at a different, maybe at a different point on each topic. The commission's at a different point on each topic. The community's at a different point on each topic. So, those are all kind of running parallel, I guess, and going on at the same time. And so, we're not only as a commission are we doing it, but on each topic, we may be at a different level.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's why that overall external communication is so important going forward, because you've got all these moving parts, And you may understand where you are on X issue, and you may understand where you are on Y issue, but the community may think you're 10 steps backwards or 10 steps further along. So getting everybody at least understanding the situation and what is happening in the background, like Earl was saying about streetscape, nobody's seen anything yet, but there's been a lot of planning. So it's in that communication is always going to be a challenge.
Well, not only that, we had a new member of the commission, we have a new driver of the commission.
You do, it's true.
I was thinking the other day, Earl is our driver, but the mayor is our bus monitor.
There you
We're
go.
both heavy drivers, so.
It's your new name tag. That's mine.
So we can call a lot of things, Denise, but that's it first.
I'm just in love.
And I would guess, you know, I may be totally wrong about this, but as far as the city commission members, and as far as the staff that doesn't include Earl, there would be different times in the year or even in the day that different of you become drivers. Is that fair to say? That each of you has to be ready, willing, and able to take the wheel when necessary. And to know when you do have to take that wheel, what road to turn, you're going to need to turn on to get to your destination, and what the speed limit is.
And that's a great example about, excuse me, about how the public and probably sometimes how the staff and the commission perceive things. When the issue comes before the commission, if I'm in the public and I think it's a great issue, then I celebrate it. I don't think it's a very important issue, then I'm going to be mayor. If it's another issue, driving the bus is that when these issues come to the forefront for the commission, the mayor and the city manager sort of like, oh, it's their babies. Well, it's really not their babies all the time. It's coming from all of us in the commission, but because they're the drivers, and now he said he's the monitor now, they didn't get the credit or blame for it. And so I think it's important for all of us to realize that to the public, we have to tell the public that, hey, this is an important issue for the entire commission as well as the community, not just for one person.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter how many times you communicate
Yeah.
something,
Yeah.
if the person hearing the communication isn't interested or isn't ready to hear it, they will say that you haven't told them that. They won't hear it at all. And that applies to staff too, I would say.
It's interesting too, it's all about perspective. When you think more about, so the commission, you know, they hear from us, you know, we try to do those monthly updates, and we try to communicate, and, you know, without going through specific questions, you know, the commission sometimes, even with that, there's, like you're saying, the staff knows exactly where we're at most of the time. And if you were to take a study and estimate the commission, how close to done are you? I would say the commission's going to think that you're farther behind than you actually are. And I think the city as a whole, those average citizens, don't realize how far ahead or how close you are to actually doing something sometimes, just because it's no one understands the black box that it's doing it.
Right.
Right, it's so hard to communicate
There's three understandings.
Mhm.
There's the staff understanding of how far along you are. Well, there's four, really.
Right.
There's your understanding, there's the staff's understanding, there's the commission's understanding, and then there's the citizens.
So the question I had for Earl is how do you get all that communication through?
Well, I don't know, because, you know, when you're looking at a project, take the wastewater plant, or take the water plant, for example. You know, when did we start on the water plant? You tell me. You know a lot, so when do you think we started on the water plant?
Yes, for me.
Yeah.
You talking about the planning
I want,
stage?
as an example,
Talking about the planning stage?
yes, when did we start
7 years ago.
for this?
For what?
For the water plant?
Oh, I'm sorry, I think fire station. Oh, this, gosh, I'm gonna say 11 years ago?
Not, so 2011. So when I
That's 10
came,
years ago.
What is
so,
it?
so when I came to the city,
In 19?
more than 20 years ago, it was already underway. And they actually started conceiving of where they were gonna go after the wastewater got done in 1998. So city staff started working on this idea of the water plant when the rate study was completed in 2000. So part of that 2000 rate study was done to try to figure out, okay, where are we financially? Can we afford a new plant down the road? Right, and so that 2000 study was done to begin the planning of the water plant. And we immediately went to work on, you can go through the history. We got the lake yield analysis done. We figured out how much water we could get out of the lake. That took like 4 years. We figured out a compliance strategy. Then we did the master plan where we had to go talk to all those sub-districts and find out how much water people around us needed. You know, that took multiple years. And then when we got to the end of that, that was 2011, when it came up with a commission again, where they were like, okay, we'll start do your RFP. And that's when most people think, whenever the commission finally had to decide on a consulting team to design it, that's when everybody's natural perspective is when it actually started. But we had already spent, several $1 million towards planning the carbon silo, those various components, and nobody realizes it.
So by the time it gets to the commission, staff has kind of already gone through the process. And it's a little frustrating sometimes because when they've already vetted everything, they've already gone through the cycle, so to speak. And then when they bring it out to the public or to us, we have to start all over again.
Almost every time.
And that's why,
It's hard.
It is hard, it's frustrating.
and that's why this retention and the city staff is so very important, because the city has to take this long-range perspective. You're playing the long game. If you don't have somebody that was here in the 1990s when that planning started, you don't have the perspective that you need to get started in 2011 to really where the public sees it, right? So all of those activities and tasks, the little ones and the great big ones, have to be continued down the road along that path toward this really beautiful building and facility, and I'm sure very good water as a result for the citizens.
One more real quick example too of that is, Chief Gray and I not talking about this, but Assistant Chief Bowman and I talked just for a second yesterday about one of the things that we've got to do is that, so we're finishing the fire station, and which still months away, and we know that there's potentially another station that we have to talk about. But the question of the police department is, it's been 10 years since we've done anything to your all's facility. Are we still, do we need that? What do we need to do? Right? As you're growing, as we see a demand, so we have to engage in that thought process now to make sure something doesn't sneak up on us in year 5.
Right.
How long has the fire station conversation been happening?
Well, the original idea of the fire station that we knew we needed to do something was 2005 when we did that. When the fire station on the bypass got done, we did a facility study because all of our facilities were the same age, right? And so we tried to prioritize those. And the police department actually was first then, but now we've circled all the way back to where, hey, it's been 10 years. 12 years, yeah, I know, I keep saying 10, it's 12.
It came in 10.
Yeah.
Well, we're all still back in 2020 before the pandemic began.
Yeah, probably.
It's
It's been 12 years, we need to think about, we don't need to forget that, because if it takes 5 years to plan something, you're 20 almost before we actually get to something.
And before you know it, you've been in the new fire station for
10
10,
years.
12 years.
Right, this plane's 5 years old.
And that makes me think that we're talking about playing the long game that the city does, and the city staff need to be thinking long-term and planning long-term and planning long before something is needed to be positioned to make that happen. But the city commission turns over, or it has the potential of turning over every 4 years, or every 2 years. 2 years, absolutely, 2 years. So a commissioner, if they're thinking about their own well-being and their own position on the commission, is thinking short game, or should be thinking short-term, rather, what's in it for me now, in this time I'm on the commission, rather than, oh, well, I need to be thinking 20 years down the road, when, you know.
I gotta say one thing about, in my time, I have never sensed that from any commission. I think I can say comfortably that every commissioner that I've been, had the pleasure of dealing with, yeah, they have certain things that they'd like to see get done, but it's never done in the framework of, I'm here for 2 years, I gotta get it done in 2 years else. Everybody's always taking a long view.
Well, that's good, that's good.
I would agree with that, and I kind of had an aha moment early on at one of the trainings that I went to. The guy stood up there and said, "You're making 50-year decisions."
Yeah, you absolutely are.
I knew it was long range, but I wasn't, I'm not even 50 years old yet. At the time, I wasn't even 40 years old. So it's like, wow, that was a little overwhelming, really, when you think about, honestly,
What is
the
that
next generation.
Native American saying, you're working on the next 7 generations, the things you do today will affect 7 generations or something like that. I'm not eloquent enough to remember the whole quote, but.
Well, one of the things that dawned on me in that same aha moment a couple years ago now, is when we look at things through our time. You know, I've been in the city 20 plus years, okay, that's a long time, but really not really. You know, because the city's been here 200 plus years, almost 240 years.
Longer than the state has been.
1787. You know, it's been incorporated. And so it's okay that it takes 5 years to do something, that's
Right,
normal.
right.
But on the human scale, we look at that and we're like, tag on it, right, this is, do, and it doesn't work like that. It doesn't work on our scale, it works on the time scale of the city.
And I want someone 50 years from now looking back at us now, thanking us like we thank our forefathers for the most part.
And mothers.
The ability,
And mothers.
yes, mothers, and our, the ability, this water plant is a great example of 100 years ago, someone thinking 100 years ahead. So I think, when we all have that perspective, it really changes.
So, city staff, are you totally overwhelmed right now about the task ahead of you? I don't know.
Ask Marshall that.
I might be, if I was you.
Marshall, seriously, you answer that
I'm
question.
going to talk. I had a little bit of a crisis when Earl had me do a year-end review of what
Yeah.
I've done this year. I was like, I haven't done anything. Because everything was set up, all that stuff was all stagnant for me. It was all for me. My entire year was for me. And I kind of had to come to grips with that and be okay with it. But also, we don't always have to look that long-term either. I think I've told myself that, and this is probably more of a staff thing than a commission thing. It's like, I can get small wins. There's small things I can do. I don't need to lose sight of the short term by just looking long term. I have the opposite problem I think most people probably have. I can get lost in this and not stop and do something today. And I think that's kind of the goal of mine this coming year, is to not get just completely caught up in these big projects. Because those are most of that stuff on there. I mean, I got 11, 12 years until I retire. I may not see the result of some of that. Like that's how long term that is. So in the meantime, to keep my sanity, I think I need to get some small stuff done.
Yeah.
Just to see some progress. And I think that's, the balance of those two things is probably the hardest part of this job.
Yeah, Josh made a good point on, about Disney, make that point.
Well, you have Disney World, we went to Disney World in fall break, and like, yes, they have big projects, they have parts of the park that are closed off, you can't even see what they're doing. But also, you see things, they constantly improve everything. Like, everything is constantly a little bit better. They never get satisfied with where anything is. And I think that's, that's government, we have a bad habit of like only doing big projects. Like, we only put money into big projects because it's easier actually for us to do. It's easier for us to build a new fire station than it is to maintain the one we have. It sounds crazy, but it's true. And I think that we have to do, that's the part of that small wins, is like, let's keep updating the things we have in small ways so that maybe we don't even have to do the big project one day. Maybe I don't have to do another Millennium Park. Somebody else has to do another Millennium Park in 20 years because we've kept Millennium Park great for the next 20 years.
And that is all about sustainability and continuity and really, what's the word I'm looking for? Good stewardship of the resources that you've been given to do your work.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and to expand on Josh's point, he had a really good point. You've got long-term goals, you've got short goals, you have to balance that. Like, for example, Earl mentioned our compensation package we talked the other day. That's not an immediate fix, it's a 3-year plan, right? But then we look at short-term goals, okay, what can we do this week, what can we do this month? Those are really important to keep that balance. And then also, look to the long term because, I already mentioned that about something about things, somebody might not have been here in 95, but, you gotta look at knowledge sharing, that's really important. And yes, like in read the book, you're gonna have your runners, your walkers, your joggers, right? You gotta know where those people fit in the organization, but you also have joggers that aspire to be runners, right? And so I think a part of this too is lay out your long-term plans. Try to do things on a strategic level. Show employees, not everybody needs to know everything in the city right now on the road, but giving the people what I call just a big picture, lets them get a better understanding how the role plays into how they can commit. Because we talk about retaining, that's something we've got to work on. Is not plan for a year now, not plan for 2 years. You need to plan for 5 years down the road and be able to have that knowledge base.
Yeah, that whole succession planning is
That's-
so key.
It is, it really is. And, you start by, just employee development. Because there are people out in the organization, like I said, wants to do a jogger, wants to do a runner, but they're not big shot in that path.
Right.
But having those long-term, short-term goals, like for me, for example, every week, first thing I do is I go in and write my weekly goals, and I'm like, I've got the yearly goals, okay, this is what we're going to do this year, and then I may have something this month, and how do you feel like but you can never take your foot off the pedal.
Right.
And I think that's really key, right there, is the balance like that.
So it's good stewardship, it's sustainability, it's succession planning, and it's celebration of those small things that you accomplish throughout your period. Like Josh was saying, he hadn't accomplished anything in 2021, but really didn't have. But, you need to stop and celebrate and do that attaboy, that attagirl stuff regularly because you are having to take the long haul approach to everything. And I hope you commissioners are hearing this with the lens of, and we need to celebrate our staff's competence and productivity and accomplishments often too. Rather than just getting a report, we need to get the report, learn from them, and say, good job, thank you.
But I think Josh's example, though, is very well stated and what a lot of us need to hear.
Mm-hmm.
It's great to walk into a new job and have the first year mapped out for you. But you gotta have the ability and the knowledge to implement what's been laid out for you. A lot of folks, well, Josh, I'm gonna say that, a lot of young folks come in and have that plan and just, wow, I'm not doing that. Completely change it, get the whole organization out of whack. So part of good leadership, Josh, is that you implement and you follow through with that plan that I can scale out there for you. And that's why you've been so successful the first year. That's why we've all been saying, wow, Josh, go. Because you're getting a lot of things done. You might not feel that way, but we see it. Yeah.
So really, the commissioner's jobs are really easy then because they've got such good staff.
And, but when we get something, when we get a big project done, so like the grand opening of the fire station, you were talking about the other night. Same reason we did a grant, and I sent, I don't know if I sent it, I know I sent it to you, the picture that we had of the number of people that was here to plan and how that was organized.
Yeah.
And like you do that, not to brag about yourself, but you do that to invite people from out of town and from other places to see what's happening there too. So you can't forget to celebrate yourself as a community,
Yeah.
which is really what that's about.
Yeah.
And it's not to be confused with zooming in on why we want to have a ribbon cutting. We want to have a ribbon cutting, not a ribbon cutting, but you want to make it an event to demonstrate your success as a community.
Well, like what Josh said, take what Earl said, that's the big things. But we gotta figure out a way to communicate the small things. You know, the public will never be as informed as the people in this room are. But I think we have to recognize that access to information locally has all but dried up with the great thing about the internet is that it provides a lot of information. Some of it's even true, but the bad thing about the internet is it's come at the cost of local newspapers. And the information is just not out there for a lot of people to know what we're doing beyond the big things. And I think it's the little things that they learn about that gives them satisfaction on a consistent basis. And that, okay, the city's doing this, or the city's doing that, or you know, even about the compensation stuff. That should tell the public that the city's trying to make sure that it's watching its nickels and dimes and making sure that they're getting their money's worth. And I know Earl's tired of hearing you talk about it, but I really think that there's so much benefit in so many different ways for making sure that the public at least has the opportunity to read of the things going on good in the city. And I don't think the newspaper is the medium. And I'm not altogether convinced that it's on the internet either, because that's gotten so filled with junk and trash.
Well,
Who wants to read that anymore?
when the local newspaper effectively exits the community, even though you still got something, it's not the same as it was, then people will flood in to fill that void. And half the time, it will not be the right information, right? Yes, ma'am.
I'm a community member, and what I'm feeling from the city these last few years really feels good. It feels, I'm getting the information from the city sites and the commissioner sites, and I'm seeing it with what the city's doing by, you know, buying Jenny Rogers, by the small things that I see with the, you know, streetscapes or these, I can't even put my finger on what the things are, but it feels forward. I haven't been to the city commission in 2 years. I used to go to a lot, but because of COVID. The MLK committee, it feels very forward moving, and it's all coming from the city. I'm not getting any of the information from the paper or from any other sources. And I feel more informed than I have before, and and it feels positive, and it feels forward moving. So whatever's happening, the website, the new website, the visibility of what's happening in the city from the city feels good. So
if a community member who is interested can find the information out, but you do have to, you know, be ready to receive it. So I appreciate that. And city employees, remember that community members are paying attention and appreciate what you're doing. Whether or not they come up to you on the street and say, you've done a good job on MLK Day, or clearing the streets of snow, or whatever the issue is, people are noticing. And people who have an interest are seeking it out. So I appreciate that perspective. And I didn't mean to interrupt you. Was there anything else that you wanted to say? No, thank you. That's real helpful. Thanks. So, where are we? Earl, do you think we've beat that for us?
It's probably,
One thing I don't think we have addressed on that list though is aggressive incentive program. And I think that came up in a meeting, our meeting last, when Art and Amel came and spoke to us, and they were talking about trying to get downtown first floor spaces more retail, and giving incentives for lawyers, et cetera, to give up those spaces. I'm not saying that's the kind of incentive we need to be talking about, but we do need to be talking about some economic incentive beyond just what we do for industry.
yeah, and unfortunately, that's one piece of that, but we've had so many vacancies inside of our development group with the CDD turnover. Mary's here today, but you've been here since what, November, December?
November 1st.
Yeah, and so
Oh,
like
yeah,
we.
you still haven't found the bathrooms yet, have you?
Well, she's been here a long time.
I've been here a long time. I was the county treasurer for
Oh,
almost
okay.
30 years,
Okay.
yeah.
But we've just had a lot of it's just not been one of the conversations that we've really been able to push, although we've done a lot of research on it. And we have a lot of information it's ready to go.
So you're positioning yourself for when that time comes?
Yeah.
Well, good. All right, so that's a whole lot of accomplishment in basically a one-year period. So, like you say, I want to stop and celebrate. Congratulations all of you. Good job. And I just did myself again, didn't I? Okay, so that was 2021. And here's what we've already got on the plate for 2022. We've got to get your city budget developed and approved by June 30th. And, you know, people who aren't paying close attention would think, oh, that's an easy thing. You just add up a couple of numbers and you're done. No, you know how hard that really is. We've got a primary election during that period. And we've got a general election. And as a result of the primary and general election, you're going to at least have a new mayor and 2 city commissioners, new city commissioners. That's a given. And all that whole forming, norming, storming, all that stuff is going to start all over again after that happens. We need to implement our Parks and Recreation Master Plan. That's been completed and we're ready to flip the switch, as they say, and implement that. And I think you all are going to have a work session in a couple of weeks to really take a deep dive into that. You need to continue your emphasis on the downtown master plan. And that includes the streetscape, I'm sure. It's on there. And the fire station and Church Street extension and probably 10 other things. Josh, if I'm not mistaken. You need to establish the EDA to get it operational, and not just operational, but functioning and doing its work and getting it staffed. It's time to modernize your economic development strategy as a community. Beyond the EDA, there's a lot more behind the scenes that needs to happen with that. Finalize your annexation of the airport. Revisit your planning and zoning ordinance so it is more modern and up to date with, especially after the things that you realized during the COVID era that need to have some tweaking. And then, after all that, carry out the regular business of the city. Manage your water plan. Make sure that people have good sewer treatment. Make sure that city staff get paid and taxes get collected and managed appropriately and staff get hired and benefits get decided on and all the other things it takes to run a modern, progressive city like Danville is. What am I missing on those things that we've got to do in 2022 before we do any of this other planning that we're talking about doing this afternoon?
You know, regular business is number one. I mean, not number one, but great things with streetscape, but the citizens just see that pothole, you know? So obviously, the little things like Josh talked about, those are key, because they're not gonna see or appreciate the big things. They'll get all caught up in the little, but that's the core of the city, is taking care of these little things. And,
Absolutely.
they've done a great
If you don't
job.
come down and
They've
cut
done a
my
great
street when the snow comes, I'm gonna be upset. I don't care how pretty the street looks after the snow melts.
Well, I'll tell you something too, that the more you're at it, you learn is how habitual people are. And so like we've gone through this exercise of going to monthly billing, and you won't believe the complaints we get for a monthly, and that's all we heard for 15 years was, we need to make this easier for monthly billing.
Yeah.
Is that right? It's unbelievable. I don't know.
Can't please them all. Most of the people are happy.
Yeah. So like we're gonna do, yeah, people have their route and they see their potholes, so they focus on that.
It's what they're paying attention to, like our community representative was talking about. She pays attention to things, and if it's not bothering her, she's not gonna pay attention to that. But she wants to know about X, new streetscape, or the Church Street extension, or whatever. So she's paying attention to that. And so is everybody else. And until it affects them individually, they may not notice. So, we think this is a pretty good list of the things that are going to be happening regardless of what we do here today or tomorrow or the next day. So then, it's time to rethink and to focus again on those 4 priorities that we mentioned in October, and that we talked about since, and that we're here to really take a deep dive into today. But first, I want to take a short break, because I think everybody would benefit from that, right?
Yes.
So,
Okay.
do you think we can come back in 10 minutes?
Okay.
Okay. Okay, 4:02.
I'm gonna call all that.
Let's see,
Passcode.
Good discussion, everybody.
Can't wait for Cody to I have to.
Yeah.
That stuff is, I'm most excited about.
good discussion, I think, today. I hope everybody else agrees. I think you've heard some things that maybe you didn't know before. For 2022. And remember when we did those 4 priorities, the economic development, staffing, communication, and Parks and Rec, we said we're going to focus on those. But unless we start thinking, doing it, and planning for it, the work's not going to get done. So we got to measure that, and we got to focus on it and give it some attention. And that's what we're going to do today. So, here's our task for today. We're going to divide the commission into 2 task forces, and we're going to have Holland and Atkins in one, and Cottle Terry in the other one, who will be working in teams of 2 to move some of these initiatives forward. Their Paris, we're going to have you serve as ex officio on both of those task forces. But in a mentoring, succession planning sort of way, so that our commissioners take the lead. Does that make sense? We're going to determine which of the 4 priorities that each task force is going to be working on. So each task force will take 2 of those priorities. And you'll be meeting with staff today to get organized for this task at hand and start planning on what that's going to look like. And the timeline that I'm thinking about for completion of it all looks kind of like this. Today is when we're getting organized and starting focusing on those projects. We're going to plan a follow-up meeting sometime before the end of February as part of the budget planning process, so that we can really see where the commission is on all the 4 different priorities, and begin to make those key decisions that you're going to need to make to get started on the work. And of course, the budget will be approved by the end of June, probably before then. When do you think that typically
We
happens?
usually end up running it right to the end of the month, because there's always little subtle changes. So it'd be the last week of June.
It really will be in June. But that doesn't mean,
Published before the end of
Yes,
June.
right.
it has to be,
You
yeah.
have your first, second reading and published. So usually the second commission meeting in June. we try
In
to-
June, you will have a budget.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean that you can't start working on some of your priorities before you have a budget, because some of the things you might already have budgeted. You just need more focused effort in those areas, right? So program operation will be after the February follow-up meeting, and hoping to finalize all of your projects ideas by the end of October, at least by election day, and then spend the last quarter of the month of the year to be finalizing any loose ends, to be evaluating your process, to be measuring what you've accomplished, and to do any follow-ups that need to be. Does that seem like a doable time frame? Earl? Seems good? Okay. Any questions on that? All right. So, here's the assignment. City commissioners, you will take the lead on your topic. And you will work as a team with your partner on that topic, but each of you will take the lead of one. You'll learn about the current status of your assigned focus areas and explore ideas and needs and do some research on each of those, and including the budget needs, because some of this may have budget impacts. You'll involve key stakeholders from the community as appropriate, or other experts on the topic as you identify them. Research other city governments, how they address those needs, including discovering any best practices. My guess is you're going to see that Danville already has the best practices, but I may be wrong, but I don't think I You'll coordinate with any other city initiatives, because if you move this one forward in this direction, it might conflict with this one. So you've got to coordinate all of those different moving pieces so that you avoid duplication or any conflicting priorities along the way. And then at the end of the day, once you've done that research and made those decisions and come up with a good plan, you're going to submit those, report those recommendations to the commission with your budget needs and any key milestones that, that are appropriate. Piece of cake? All right. So, why are we doing this? First of all, it's going to get the projects done. It's going to make the focus mean something for you. It's going to provide the opportunities that we missed 2 years ago for the commissioners to develop new and deeper relationships with one another so that that performing status exists at all times within the commission. It's going to give you an opportunity to network and learn from other cities and counties that you have missed the opportunity of doing during the pandemic. It will help you develop better relationships and deeper relationships with your city staff outside of city commission meetings. That was one of the key things that the commission mentioned in our October meeting, because you had this history and this tradition of not talking to city staff outside of the commission setting, and everybody agreed that there needs to be some change to that. This is an opportunity to move in that direction, even while you're also developing protocols to make sure that that's a positive and productive interaction. Making sense? And you'll also affirm and validate the competence of city staffs. I think you will learn how lucky you are to have the staff in place that you absolutely do. I know you already know that, but you really they're going to knock your socks off. We'll just say that. And it aligns the city needs and efforts toward common goals. So that's why we're doing this. Is there any other reason we're doing this, Earl, or Ashley, or Andy, or Evan? So that about covers it. All right, so here's the plan. I want the commissioners in the room, not you, Mayor, but the 3 commissioners in the room to come forward a minute. And I've got these 4 little cards laying on this table here, and each of them has one of the 4 areas, like this. So, come on up here, come on up here, and everybody picks one.
Ready to pick Kevin's one?
No? I didn't want to pick for you, I'm making your pick, so that way I'm not going to be blamed. Okay. So, Commissioner Atkins, what have you got?
Communications, ma'am.
Okay. And Commissioner Holland, what have you got?
I have economic development.
All right. And Commissioner Terry, what do you have?
Parks and Recreation.
And so that means that Commissioner Cottle has staffing, okay? So then, communication and, what'd you say?
Economic development.
Economic development will be working together. And the other 2, staffing and Parks and Rec, will be working together. And you will be working with your staff that are in that department, those departments, and researching and developing a series of recommendations for the commission to decide on. So since you all are already sitting at the same table back there, those 2 tables there can be your group, and these 2 tables here can be your group.
Okay.
Okay?
Mr. Teacher?
Yes.
This will be very hard to ask you folks who are staff as well as some of the community. I would feel comfortable putting some of them on some of these teams as well.
Absolutely, absolutely, yes. So what we're gonna do is kind of mix up the room a little bit. So you all can go back and sit in your spot. And Stephanie, Randy, you're already in the right spot. Earl, you gotta move to this table. Evan, you gotta come forward. Ashley, where are you? You gotta stay back here.
Communication, man.
And and then, I'm not listening to city staff. So what I want you all to do is, those of you who aren't assigned to a group, I want you to choose a group that is something that interests you, that you work closely with, that you need to learn more about. Yeah, we might want to turn,
Maybe I should go here.
Marshall, which one are you going to? Which one are you going to?
They thought I was staying here.
Okay, I'm going to the other one then.
I need you here. I need you. Who else, John? You know, I consider Parks and Rec. Well, you know what I mean? I just think it would be. I mean.
I'm a bad communicator. I was gonna go back there with Tony Gray and we were gonna communicate.
Yeah. Of course it costs, but if you do it right.
It won't.
So this one's a hard one.
I'm sitting with you.
Especially if it's try
So is it only those 2 down there that you can ask about?
yeah, or somebody else.
Who else? Marshall's going.
Do you want me to join you?
Whoever wants to.
I know.
Okay, so our cast is figured out what our communication.
Like, I know.
City commission, staff, as well as the community, right? So some activities to improve communication.
Okay, so staff, you have to your table and spot, and I think it's the website. All the information on it, organized. And if I can interrupt your conversation for a minute, so staff is going to go through what you all do in your regular job, a new topic you're talking about, and the issues that you've got going on, the needs that you have, the challenges that you're facing, that kind of thing, to kind of introduce the topic to your commissioner team, right? There's all kinds of ways and tools that people use to plan out projects. And the city may have a really good project management piece of software. I have no idea. But for today's purposes, I'm going to hand out some planning, a real simple planning tool that you all can use. You don't have to, but it might make things a little bit more cut and dry on the things to be thinking about.
Now we gotta wake up.
I did not think of that. He asked me when we started. So, before we really take a dive into that, to start with your focus area up in the top, and write your focus area in the order, is economic development, staffing, and communication, and parks and rec. And each focus area is likely to have subtopics within it. So in the economic development field, you're going to have things like EDA and EDP and incentive plan and hiring of staff and any number of things that might be sub-focus areas within the economic development umbrella area. Does that make sense? So Parks and Recreation might have a focus area by park or by type of activity or something like that. And that's up to you all to come up with what those focus areas are on the right side of the paper. And then for each of those, you're going to come up with an objective of what you want to achieve through that focus area. So the EDA might be to have that functioning and staffed and with bylaws and those kinds of things by the end of your project period, for example. There's going to be stakeholders to involve in anything that you do. So following through the EDA example, you've got the county, the city, you've got that. You've got the EDP, you've got the Chamber of Commerce, Industrial Foundation, State Economic Development Office, the ad maybe, and individual industry representatives from all your industries out in the area, and just generally citizens. But citizens are really interested in that topic. We already know that our mayor is interested in that topic, so that's one of your stakeholders. And then the key activities that you'll need to do to move that initiative forward. Not just the big initiative, but the sub-ones within there. And then what are the issues that you're going to have to face? Now, you might know a lot of the issues right now. Time might be one of them, right, Josh? But other issues might come up along the way. So don't think that just because you're filling out this form today and starting the planning today, that you're going to be finished. So you're going to still be identifying stakeholders, activities, and issues along the way. So what you want to focus on today as best as possible is to come up with the objective for why you're doing it in the first place, why we're going to all that trouble, who you're going to involve, and how to get the work started. So, I lost my sheet here somewhere. So, staff, you start off with talking about your topic. And this group is lucky because you only have to talk about one topic, so you can wait till, and you're going to have to fill Kevin in on how this process works. But so you can take a deep dive into Parks and Recreation today, and Evan is going to give you his perspective and background on things that will be important to listen to, and obviously Randy and Josh will have input there too. And you can start talking about staffing, but Kevin will be taking the lead in staffing, so we'll have to read him in at some point. Don't forget to brainstorm your topic and try to get as many ideas on the table as possible before you start narrowing down and getting more specific and more a doable list. Staff, you might want to discuss cities or resources that have good examples that you want to share, that you might want to research. And so commissioners, it would be a good idea for you to learn about those firsthand. So make some phone calls or have some Zoom meetings or do some Google research about your topics to take a deeper dive into it. Decide on who's going to contact who and by when. and then set the dates for the next meetings so that you can be prepared for a commission recommendation. We hope, Earl, by the end of February, is that right? Is that what we would want?
To follow up with this, yeah, we absolutely should.
So that's the game plan. Questions? You know your assignment? This table is self-destruct.
This one's fine. I don't have this, but this is more exciting because it's.
Okay, ready, set, go.
Okay. I guess you want to go around, see what your part does,
The
put
different
that on the
company
list,
on
and
the
that
website,
would be our
which
start.
is,
Because Earl
we
might
guess
have to
the
go to
information.
and Marshall, I work with the industrial foundation, like
It's something that I actually said today.
right,
She
so
said
they
they
want
want
to expand.
I made some comments on Facebook, which are the first comments I made. It's about finding that information on the website.
And they'll put out questionnaires.
It's not just.
Basically.
And she actually looked at that and said she's going to. I said, that's good communication.
We can cover the water, but it's not
website.
really an issue, especially with.
But I guess the stakeholders from the facility, that's Earl spoke on earlier.
Really close.
Because they have to go down.
To reach out to
Staff. So,
To the point that it's a challenge conversation to have.
Or
We
two,
should have posted that.
we definitely would get to the
So, you
stakeholders.
know, with the pending
And that's what I was
upgrades.
specifically looking for, because I was interested in how I thought the communication with you in the middle of it, but I said I'd follow through. Earl went all of our activities and events that are going on.
There's been the one.
Yeah, sure.
brand new committees, they feel perfect.
Yeah, and, you know, currently right now, it's something that we need to determine right now.
But again,
From an economic development standpoint, to make ourselves.
we talked all weekend long about whether or not, because, you know,
But even
I
like
guess the next one,
yeah,
sometimes you do
we want to
that.
expand, right?
But,
That's huge.
So how do we put that
So we
down?
need to take care of the water.
Invest in our infrastructure, all that.
One of the things, which you gotta explain more about, I don't know.
I know that was an issue.
One of the things you
All
need to do
hours
when we
of
get
the
this
day.
right is sign up for
Right.
notifications.
Of the water.
So anything that
And
comes
that's
to the website, it will send you
Sewer.
an email or a text alert. So if we post something to the news thing, so like say MLK would have shot you a text
A lot of
message.
our.
If there's a new agenda posted, it will send you a text, I think Bernie email, which
But that means somebody is on the other end sitting out.
So it's now.
it's when we post it, when we post it to the website. When we post it,
It gives us the option to send a
Yes,
text
it,
message to anybody
it,
that's
because we,
subscribed to
you know, so we
our
do
website.
have several water.
With our own
Okay,
text
which is
signature,
back.
if you want to say, so like
They have
the
those-
agenda, if you're signing up, you're not going to the agenda, I'll
Some
send you
are
a
on
text,
here,
the
some
news
are
agenda
on Christmas
for
break,
Monday,
some
it's
break,
on
yeah,
the
and they have
website.
It happens out of night, right? Because see, somehow yesterday, Facebook sent me a message that it didn't know he would be paying for public download again. I was part of the discussion, but somehow got it on the reason, my emails, Facebook. So I guess somebody put that out on the Facebook page and.
I put a notification in place, because that goes for.
So see, I get
Bill
alerts
Park
on my,
that.
I've got my text message, so it tells me, when I click on that link, it takes me to the attendance center, and I can see that.
So you can.
And it will do that for events, it will do that for the news alerts,
And I'm not
emergencies.
getting
I
out.
can sign up for
One thing
meetings.
that I think that
So we need,
And
the industrial.
Well, that's what I was asking,
The city didn't make a survey on that part. To fill those positions, so, I think it was sort of, it should be in consideration.
Well, that's what we're doing right now.
But there's people that don't take paper either, so how do we get to go?
That's,
I think we have to have an overall strategy of how we're gonna do that. And then in that overall strategy, we address
Probably, we would like to be
those
in a
different
position to.
parts of our community.
Yeah, if we have a philosophy, then we know.
Correct, that's exactly right. No, we have to have.
We know the procedures, we have a philosophy.
Exactly what I'm saying.
That would
Then I think once you have that overall strategy,
So we do need to.
we should also make sure that,
That's part of it.
And we're also.
Yes, I need to do that.
or as a
because you gotta
department
have
head,
Facilities.
who's gonna be doing it?
Right.
And it's gotta go here or there, probably.
Be a job.
But I think that's the biggest thing in the city, you know, like, we do our press releases, I'm doing one thing, you're doing another thing. The city, if Ashland's doing one thing, you know, there's not a lot of continuity or.
But see, if you do it though, the key would be,
Yeah, I mean.
is that everybody, she's sending stuff to you, and she's sending stuff to you, and I'm sending stuff to you. We all should be getting.
We all should, it doesn't.
That would be the key, because anytime somebody puts something out,
As far as.
regardless of who's listening now,
Also.
to live in there, well, I don't think that you should get it,
Right.
right?
Like right now, all the new reports are coming to me, and I'm publishing all the news.
That's a training thing for us.
To be in position.
To have everybody.
Right, I mean, I think, and I'm putting it on you, but it needs to be a staff member, maybe a new staff, that is in charge of communication. Because you have a lot to do, so I'm not going to actually take care of that, you know.
And that's been the thing that's made us the hardest, is we're so busy doing our own job, we don't have to tell you what we're doing.
Well, and one recommendation I made, because I stayed at the city commission.
How long you doing?
She did for COVID.
They shut down.
I think I
The other thing I want to recommend, really, is taking care of race communication.
And so that's a budget need that you need to get on it, yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's really, we all are, you know, communication is one of the most important things.
Yeah, that's
That could be all.
it's not.
That should.
And that takes a burden off staff. But that's, you know, I'm sure the chief here is not like thinking all the time about communicating to the public. And it's probably not in your wheelhouse of your top 10, top 10 skill sets, would you say?
Well, it ends up having to be that.
But it has to be, but it's not, but you would
There will be much debate.
The biggest thing for us is staff, to get somebody to take care of that. We recognize
Consistency.
that's probably our biggest downfall. We're not the best at getting things out.
Here's an example that happens in Danville, Kentucky, right? See, Danville schools, the whole kind of schools have a full-time training. So when you got something ready to put out, you write it up, stuff, but you send it to the key person. They may be teaching something right back to you for an editorial, and then it goes out. But then it go out when that one person sees it, but it's about, it's full-time listening.
Housing values, which are 350 here.
You know, I mean, it always be
I mean, we live down Bluegrass.
But you said news stories, and we got PR and
Where's everybody
everything that are going out.
But they were
We
very.
got events and schedules
They've
and
been well
stuff.
maintained.
What do you think about what is on the TIP?
agenda? You know?
And that's actually walkable right to City City, so, yeah.
And Jody would have to have, like, covenants, right? So it's called.
Well, his development.
Yeah.
Mr. Frequency, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Well, that's cool.
So he does that.
But this is gonna be extremely expensive unless you just do a digital one, which a lot of places are doing a digital magazine online. But that doesn't keep the people who don't get that, everybody, but you're talking about a lot of money.
So the question.
No, I'm just talking about any kind of magazine type thing. And then how you're gonna get it to the people.
Is it appropriate?
It's gonna cost them. It just goes in the trash.
That's the
Yeah, they don't pay attention to that.
Well, here's the thing. The investment in this right here would probably pay for a full-time staff person's salary if you did this right. Consider to what, 15?
But then who's gonna publish this? I mean, who's gonna put this together?
Well, that's what I'm saying, I'm saying that
It's
this,
a lot of work.
and before I would go this route, I would have seen us try to full-time staff.
How much is the full-time staff?
Well, I'm not disagreeing with you, but in the tightness of our budget, we have to have second option, because we may not be able,
Yeah, that's
we
right.
may not be able
That's
to
right.
fund that person.
Yeah, and it might be a podcast.
It might be part of
So that's, we're planning and zoning, that's the portion.
So housing, that would be, that's not development, we're not royalty, but just.
We can afford
We
it.
can, so,
Yeah.
How about?
Is it where you're putting in
Because I think
zoning?
people are more.
yes.
Well, you feel that person, you gotta hire that person, or you gotta work it out. You gotta spend that money on
Communication.
graduation program.
Oh, yeah. You don't have to.
Well, unless we wanna give a person.
That's what I was gonna say, you don't have to. That's the contract, but it's not. But no, you don't have to, if you want to keep it.
If you wanna keep that status, you gotta have one.
But what I'm saying is,
We've had.
communication as more important than that status.
There's no reason we don't be quick.
Well, you know, you look at Jackson Park, it has, you know, the key thing is Jackson Park has it. If they're a land, and it has ball fields, you know, right, and it's a beautiful green space, tucked away in the neighborhood, where that's potential to draw lots of crowds.
I think we can get all kinds of.
I think it's just
First of all, I don't want.
developing the game plan and, you know,
That would be, would that make it more easier? So, when we say,
We had that generation, that's all.
Got the ball rolling.
use
It's like what Josh was on earlier.
You don't
You know,
use
he hasn't got this
websites, or
finished
they don't
product.
use
And,
websites.
I think it's just
But
making
it's a
sure.
big thing, it's not.
Wait a minute, do you try to put some website in there?
We do have it.
This,
So right here.
and first of all,
But
it's
you
the
can start seeing that finished product a lot sooner.
nobody's going
Later.
to. So, you know, you can't say, well, we have a lot of traffic here, you can put stuff on.
I don't think,
On the
Parks
website.
and Recreation, whoever, finishes the product.
You know, and I feel that something that's a one, needs to be one
I
place.
think all of those.
And if you use Facebook, I can see Christmas parade pictures, you know, more social kinds of stuff. But not, I don't wanna have to go there and find out what I was. Find out that I need to, that's posted after the parade. I don't wanna go to Facebook. And the only place that I find out there's a need for,
that's
it's
what's
in
that
there. Michael Jackson
So
Park.
city county just
You know, there's three ways. I mean, that's sort of.
So like, you know, we was.
That's not how we're structured. It used to be on the.
Well, and maybe a compromise is that they gotta be in there.
Well, they are. If I put something on Facebook, I put a link to the website.
Yeah, but it's not on the website.
See, what she
No,
said,
that isn't, I know that was it's not on there, because there was confusion on this. That's why that's not on there.
if you're about that one area,
Stories have links to
Yeah.
them. It has a little blurb from the story, and it says the full story, it's all the way below, and it takes you to that stuff, that's newsflash.
and that's all.
It gives you the entire story.
So can I go, so in other words, if I go to the website, which I do, where this story located, it's gonna pop up on my screen. That's all I have to hit that one now. See, the thing about Facebook is that some of them will go to Facebook and it's like, boom, I got it. Don't have to do anything else to bring it up on the spot. On the website, you have to do more than on Facebook. So that's
In
good.
order to use Facebook, the city now is press release. Facebook. I don't really have to go on Facebook now to get information on what my tax is.
Oh, I agree with
Yeah,
that.
Facebook about it now.
No, sometimes it stops me and it goes,
That just goes to show you the rate that doesn't need it.
So we've got to make sure
sometimes
that.
on the city website, I've been using the city website, I've been doing all of this in order to make it relation. And it stops me, because you gotta sign in.
So if you don't have a Wilma Brown Facebook page, it's stuff.
Yeah, hospital, city, town, citizen.
I wouldn't know it.
I will say this, I will say that a lot of people that ask me questions about meetings or things. Most of those meetings or whatever, they will sign. I went to the
That's
city's
like 8
website
miles from Madison.
and could not find it.
Absolutely, that's true.
Now,
So for us, like, that is equivalent to that.
It looks like anybody does read this stuff on the website.
Here's where.
it is a, but that,
The problem for us.
and I will say a lot of
there's
that
county line
is,
there.
uh,
And so we are actually then, you add,
that
here's where the population.
geographic,
6 miles away.
population.
Yes.
Demographic, that's the word I'm looking for. Demographic is different, you know. I think there's people that, they just want to hear stuff,
So when you look at
and those people that want to hear stuff or know certain things, a lot of times are justification. But then the people that are looking
Then
for
when you look
stuff,
at us as one
that
region.
are involved, you know, they're looking at that information, they want.
So
While you're
I
up
would
there,
You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying, like, if it's just a press release, a lot of times, 90% of the time,
And there were
people
great
that-
incentives.
a
that
press
went
release, they're gonna get it off,
What are the key
the, Facebook. But people are interested in when a meeting is, where you all are doing something, or what's going on.
Yes, and you
Bet
we don't have any control
what
what the state's gonna
Oh,
do.
Whatever we do, it's gotta be
They're,
seen.
well, economics or.
We gotta be serious, if you go to the village, and if I, let's say I go to Facebook, and I go, whatever you find there, we should find it, just a week, it's back there.
Well, and it's the work with Merge County.
But you're coming from a whole different
No.
county.
No, counties, and then you have West County. Because we are, if somebody,
Okay, some things are.
I mean,
No, you're right, you're right. Ohio's
It's not.
20 years from now.
So I think, you know, you get the information. And then whatever else.
One of the other. Workforce development. Yeah, you're gonna say that,
But one thing I will question is the use
Figure out
of
as a group, how we want to think
There are
about
only
it.
20% of the
Here's where
girls in the states even have.
So you can look at it two different ways. You can look at it
Well,
just
it's
from
still on there, and on the website, it specifically
recruiting
says,
business. I think that's.
check, it says, on the introduction to the new website, it says
You look at
specifically,
the
for more
community
information,
radio
follow us
program.
on,
You pick up Stanford, here's where.
Facebook,
Denver,
and
Lebanon,
and not only
Springfield, you
that,
pick up
there's
those.
information, there's also, besides the thing, there's also information to follow up. So if you get Facebook, there's another thing, but I do and all that.
We can take it, we can take it off.
Can I ask you a
We've got to
question?
lean into our circle.
Why is staff even doing that? Why don't we have a website designer that makes an interactive website, we put some video, and then when you need something changed and done,
Why do we?
all the money, changed and done.
We just paid for to do all that new stuff. We got staff here.
What's that?
Yeah.
We just staff it, we just pay
That's
for
my
it.
point, that's my point. It's a waste of your all's time, and it's not even in your area of expertise.
Oh, I'm telling you.
And it's not in their area of expertise. Anybody can
I
build
think
it.
we need to find a communication person
Thank you.
to just give us a overall strategy on how we need to do things. Get into certain cities. You know, like, my press releases, you know, one of the things we've been talking about is, okay,
Well, no.
getting more sources.
And what
So they have a saying that you have a captain that go between, telling me what's going on, writing a press release, and getting that stuff out of me writing a press release. Right now, you know,
Because you writing a press release is a waste of your time and
a
talent.
lot of times it is, and we should have that,
But it's gotta be done right.
but it does have to be done.
It'll be done every day.
You know, so we did the staff.
A staff member. We're
But
talking about, but a staff member, a new staff member, that can write it.
But they gotta evaluate, you know, they told me you need to do this, so I can, it can get to me and I can get this out. Or, and even with that, you know, hey, Ash,
I'd like to source it out first, just to keep the cost and benefits to a minimum. And then if it's determined that it's about outsourcing is getting prohibitively expensive,
Then you got.
then hire somebody. But they gotta have expertise in that area.
But is somebody outsourcing gonna be on us? Are we gonna be their only clients? Are they gonna be able to get us stuff out quickly?
And I tell you, guy, I'm thinking of, I'm not, I don't know this answer. You can call Graham Jackson,
He doesn't know that
because
yet.
Earl's got familiarity. And just say, here's what we want, and let him come in and bring you 3 or 4 examples of what he thinks he can do. I don't know how you would like to interface with him in that, he comes, but he does have an active police and
Oh,
Yeah, because we're setting, we're not doing, that's what I'm thinking. That's what I'm thinking.
But our firm will have more than just one person.
Put us in a different.
And it's somebody right.
That would be my only concern, and I don't necessarily have a dog in it either way. I don't, if I've got something that needs to go out, if I send it to you, are you getting it out right now? If it's immediate, does it go out right away versus, I know if I'm sending it to Ashley, regardless of what time of the day it is.
I mean, there was stuff over the weekend.
Yeah, and I get stuff like that too.
I promise you, if you've got somebody on staff, Graham or somebody, they're gonna respond. They're gonna respond. There's too much competition in that area for them not to be responding.
But that would be my interest, just the immediacy of it, can you get it out quicker?
But without the name being involved, we decided to position for be part-time or full-time, and that be their primary responsibility.
But we need somebody directly to be the communication.
With the school.
But the school district.
And then that person, when they don't have those immediate things, they're going out looking for stories and they're going to ask those questions. Like, okay, Tommy, I saw this, it's like, give me some information, let me write up something to put on out there.
The lady that just left the
How much of this
full-time job is in the school.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, okay. It's over the motion. Yeah, we just, that's true.
You probably
We talked about this before.
Well, we've been here for years, we just haven't been able to fund it.
Well, but you're talking pennies on the dollar. If you consider that that's your face, that's a lot of times your first impression to industry. You know, they search you out long before they're contacted. So if you go to the website, there's like 5 or 6 training in today's market.
Well, and you know,
Yeah.
center covers.
But she says that they had to provide dinner if we stayed at school.
Oh, gosh.
I called my wife and told her to bring it to us, right?
Okay, sure.
No, look,
One point, so 5 minutes.
all right, it's that one truck.
One point also, let's remember, we're just talking about.
Right, the Bible.
There's all kinds of.
To me, that's kind of true.
Well, I'll have to say, that's improved tremendously. Now we have it in one email we can send to all employees. We have things that go out to all those employees, and we have, of course, our management team, there's lists. We have board commissioners, there's lists. Probably the only thing I get a little, I'm not always.
So will structure be in the bylaws?
Sending it to you.
No, yeah.
There's some different things I like to
So the
look at.
city has this EDA county, has this EDA that was created.
Right.
But we also already
Yes.
have
Oh, with the city commissioner.
ordinance and MOU
But like somebody,
that
yes.
we're designating all these
Like if you're a police
responsibilities.
officer,
We're all
you can't, you shouldn't be just.
So you've got to twist, you've got to.
The department heads to me.
Right now, our existing.
Should be allowed to be a conduct to it, but that's a code procedure. Is that you gotta have
That's just what it says.
to.
So we have to
If
replace,
these kids.
we have to replace our existing documents over here. And that's.
Well,
you take care of it.
That's a good point, then it's a two-way street. The commissioners need to be able
How they merge
to easily communicate with
to
staff.
maintain one voice and
Well, it's just like going to listen, you
communication and public-private partnership. So
Every
every facility,
Because, at the Jimmy Rogers basketball games, there were 300,000 people. That's exactly what it
have a
is.
company.
But anyway, it was
And I don't want to be,
one game of Disney.
if I'm a sole proprietor,
Other teams coming in because they were
there's
running
nothing
with their
that's
team.
required
You
to
had all these
be
cars, all these people getting out of Jimmy Rogers.
I can
And the ladies complained,
So
said,
advocate.
why would you ever make
Cannabis
more money?
is a
I
private
said, I have my own, I wouldn't even make Jimmy Rogers.
buying a parcel of land.
So
they're not on the
I try to calm her down and say,
They're,
hey,
they're
our community's not developed, we're in
So
trouble.
some of those companies do
I'll
not
still
do
do this
business
program,
with
Richard.
public agencies because they don't want to do financial packages.
Evidence that
So there's an economic advantage to it.
they want every people to make it, that's what we're making.
Even if the
That's their
city
team that
that
you're
you're
buying,
buying,
not
not
mine.
property.
So, it's not everybody wants to.
Not everybody wants to deal with it. Right. So how
How
do
do
we
you get
successfully allow both
Well, I appreciate what you
and still
do,
provide communication?
and I know that you're overwhelmed, and that's why I want I would just say,
And you stop and visit whoever has the best models that might,
I didn't know that.
So
but where, what stories?
So we get these ideas from.
Henderson, Madison,
The property is.
because I'm still wanting to go.
but look at all their models.
But where does the story go?
To me.
Oh, okay, as
To me,
they,
and I'm responsible for publishing it.
Probably driven from all those models.
And then.
But it's just something that's trying to convince you.
yeah, no, I just wanted to know what.
How do we?
The one I'm.
Did they all go through, have a different approach?
No.
That's how I walked in on the.
Boiled out.
You know,
But
it's
white boys.
Oh, that's what you're saying, that shouldn't be a responsibility.
Right.
You need somebody.
So I have to remind myself, hey, you wrote that story today.
Come back.
Let's
Let's
get
get
it.
Now, what I want
A lot of
to
good
do
minds, just gotta,
We gotta get
A
a
third.
everybody keep working together.
of the.
Want to or not, we
We
got-
need to bring this young lady
So
to
it
the
doesn't
EDA
reach
meeting.
out.
Right, yeah, that's and say, hey, what do you have in common?
But
We're gonna
over
go from
90% of all people in the United States are access.
pulling apart or digging your heels in over one.
And I think it's even higher than that, you know.
So we get hooked up in how we don't.
And so everybody can access
Yeah,
It's like-
see,
like
that's,
ours.
that's.
websites if they want to.
No, I think we need to drive more people to find.
Yes.
Say, hey, there's a news flash posted.
We're talking to the guy.
Hey, there's a new event
Yeah,
down.
because some people want what they want, they immediately.
Because the world is changing. The world is changing. You
And
gotta
then
think
they
about
watch it,
it.
there's like, oh, there's a new story.
Right, how's it
and
gonna
let's see
be
what it's about. And then I click on there and I'm not interested about the read. But
They're
I
right,
am, I'm interested.
but at least it's there.
Okay.
I mean, we're the reporting's, you know. The oversight, we got going, we're concerned on issue,
You need two phones.
secret.
You need to work.
Yeah, and that's another thing.
So we can talk for the next 2 hours,
$2 million.
but let's not, okay?
Then you need to tell.
So we want to finish up and each group report out, and no more than a minute reporting out your key decisions or the key insights. That's all I have. And then
None of it is the city.
No. And you don't all.
I didn't know you had access to that. I never sent it through that.
And that's the only
Sending
thing.
philosophy is
It's the notification.
Well, thank you all for letting me be part of this. You brought it to us.
Are you, we need to officially.
What's the question?
You get to choose.
Okay, I'll report our objectives. Our objectives are economic development. Number 1 is the EDA, fully formed and functional. Number 2 is have one voice and revise economic structure. Number 3 is figure out staffing as far as the economic development team. Number 4 is maintain infrastructure. That's why we're working with Marshall, keeping everything up, but also increasing sewer capacity for industry and so forth. So that's the 4 objectives.
That's just a little bit of work, keep you busy. Good. All right, let's give them a hand. A lot of work done in a short period of time. Actually, you want to go, Commissioner Atkins, you want to go next?
Yeah, our focus here is communications. Our objective is really just one, as the city to identify philosophy and strategy for effective communications with our website as the primary source.
All right.
And stakeholders, that includes all of us. The community, the commissioner, the staff. Then key activities, everything under 2 minutes.
Great idea.
2 minutes to write down, but we put down news stories, PR announcements, events, agendas. This could take the place of this big discussion about city and county news, Facebook site, website. And then to overcome and solve this problem, our first answer to that is that we have a full-time staff person that's 100% responsible for communications.
New,
All right.
new staff.
An additional, I'm sorry, yeah, a new staff member, right?
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Let's give them a hand. Good communication skills. Okay, and we're going to move to Commissioner Terry.
So ours is Parks and Rec. Our objective is to provide recreational opportunities for all ages and citizens. We have a whole list of stakeholders, some of which being schools, hospitals, city, county, citizens, businesses, the Parks and Rec Committee, employees, Center College. We want to add staff to maintain facilities with day programs, competitive salaries, and training for the employees. And basically, almost all this is already laid out in our master plan. We're gonna, we pick out some stuff that maybe is not in the master plan. Adding programs for adults and possibly coordinating with senior citizens. Pocket parks and neighborhood parks improvement, fairground implementation, upgrade and maintain Lynn Park. Increase staff, coordination of events, and connecting the parks with trails.
Good job. Again, not much there to worry about, but just, keep you busy for there too. Okay, give them a big hand. All right, so we feel like we've made some progress today. So I hope you have set aside a little bit of time to schedule for the next time to get together with the commissioners and the staff. And keep working toward that late February date to be determined once Earl and I get together and figure that one out later. And with that, Mayor, I will turn it over to you, sir.
Anybody have any additions? So we've got a timeline. I guess Earl, probably what we ought to do at every meeting, have that timeline in front of us.
Yeah, so I'll come back with a budget calendar, and I don't know with what that KBT thing this week, I don't know if I'll have it by the 24th, but pretty soon, or with the weather, we kind of screwed all of our my schedule up for sure. But, so we'll get a budget calendar out, which will include this, and some other, I'm missing something else too. So we'll get that out soon, the bottom line. That will have the state on it.
And that will determine all of your all's work
Because it have to fit that.
to, plan backwards from that.
Yeah, I mean, we probably ought to keep these in front of us to see, okay, how are we tracking here? Where are we on this particular item?
We've done some planning very similar to this. When we've done that, the entire staff and the entire commission someone that's focused on one item together. And that way that makes the sort of, this sort of experience more, thought process.
So what you can do as the lead on this, Commissioner, is assign those tasks or get volunteers, or volunteer people for those things.
Yeah, the lead goes to the city manager for the next meeting.
Right.
We're sort of not really in charge of the department or an aspect of city government. We gotta be careful about how we
True that.
explain it out.
We'll filter it through.
Good, good, good. Anything else?
And I guess Earl, you'll email us the schedule of this and all the notes she had up there?
I can. Do you want to send your PowerPoint to me? Let me just. Ashley, send it to Ashley. And let Ashley contribute. She's going to send her PowerPoint. Send it to the commission.
And us.
And us.
Yeah, well,
Nice to meet you. Thanks for
hey,
coming.
Ashley, put it on the website.
Okay. All right.
Communications 101.
With a nice higher
Motion to adjourn.
summary.
I would adjourn.
Actually.
Motion made to adjourn, anybody else?
Second.
Feel free to send it to me.
Judge?
What's the problem?
I think they want to say.
I'm scheduled to 9 o'clock. What's wrong?
Oh, second, did she second?
Made seconded, all that want to stay can stay. All that want to leave can leave. All right.